Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that shaking head, bobblehead looking son of a bitch is Tim, and we talk about horror movies on this show. And this episode... Whoa, I thought it was... That is a vehicle, but it almost felt like the reality was ripping apart and you were going to get sucked out of the window or something.
It's definitely a helicopter.
Oh, it's a helicopter? Alright, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a...
Someone's on the loose. I literally, like a weekend or two ago, like no joke, there was literally a helicopter just circling my apartment, and like cops like had the street blocked off like outside my window. Like I peeked outside my window and I saw like a cop just in the middle of the street, and then like I didn't want him to see me, so like I poked my head down. But
Tim, you realise that's really suspicious if he happened to notice you poking your head down.
yeah, that's why I ducked out of the way. I didn't want him to see me.
Yeah, but if you just stand there...
I don't live in a great neighborhood, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I feel like if you just stand there watching, like, he probably knows that you're, not the one they're looking for, because you're just kind of watching.
True. Yeah.
Like, you don't care that they see you. I'm saying, Tim, is don't antagonize the police. I think that's the idea.
Lesson learned.
I would be really upset if anything ever happened to you.
If I was in jail, you'd love it.
There could be tears. So, anyway, this episode we are talking about a sequel to a movie we did last month during the Octoberthon. It was another franchise that we kickstarted, and I feel like I can't say kickstarted anymore because now you think of the website, but yeah, so we did Friday the 13th, so this is going to be Friday the 13th Part 2.
I like that it's actually Part 2. It's not like Friday the 13th 2. It is Part 2.
Well, it's like they're trying to fool us into thinking they actually had a plan for like all the parts that they were going to do, and it was like a set thing. And they keep the part. The part is there until number 8. I mean, they change numbering. It switches from regular to Roman numerals for the fifth one. Although the fourth one doesn't even have a number, but then the fifth one has Roman numerals up until 8. But it's always part. It's always, well, I guess again except 4 because it doesn't have anything. It's just Friday the 13th, the final chapter. But
that is infuriating.
It's just really annoying. But then it switches to Roman numerals. But the part is always there, so we're led to believe that the first 8 of these movies were all planned as one epic saga.
Oh, you didn't remember back in the 80s when Kevin Feige told everyone about his was it Phase 1 of Friday the 13th?
Phase 1, and then Phase 2 just kind of whittled and died and didn't happen.
Yeah.
Jason Goes to Hell just kind of killed it. But yeah, so we're going to talk about Friday the 13th Part 2, and obviously we're doing one of these every month, give or take, until we've done the franchise. So
every month that has a Friday in it. So.
That's true. I can't dispute that statement is true. Yes, every month that we do one of these will have a Friday in it. At least 4 of them, in fact. The occasional one even has 5.
We call that a bonus.
so that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about that. So we'll start off spoiler free, and we'll give you warning before we go into spoilers, and that's what we're going to do. So I guess, I'll describe the plot. So the survivor of the first movie is quickly dispatched, I don't think that's a spoiler, in the opening scene, and then we come to a new camp, which is on the same lake as Camp Crystal Lake, but it is not the same camp. It's like down the water a bit. And this camp is 5 years later, which, by the way, this is something I want to do as we go through these. I want to keep track of what year we're supposed to be on, based on... Because the first movie is 1980. This movie came out in 1981, but it says it's set 5 years later. So for the record, Friday the 13th Part 2 is set in 1985, right?
Okay.
I want you to remember that, because I want to count up all the 5 year laters and stuff we get throughout this franchise, because I'm pretty sure by the time we get to like the 7th or 8th, we should be in the 2000s, but we're not.
Does it specifically say in the first one that it is taking place in the present, like when the movie came out?
Yeah, because when it cuts, because you have the flashback at the start, and then it cuts to present day, and it says Friday the 13th, whatever, 1980.
Oh, okay. So interesting.
That's I think it does. I remember it doing that. Maybe it doesn't say the year, but I definitely remember it coming up saying what the date was. Yeah, which by the way, it's funny because in the first movie I had commented that no one ever actually mentioned it's Friday the 13th, but in this one, the guy telling the story does actually say, "Oh, it all happened that Friday the 13th." I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right." Someone acknowledged it. That's cool. So they're opening up this other camp, and they're doing counselor training before the camp opens for 2 weeks down the lake. And of course, Jason in this one, not his mother, is around and killing people, and that is kind of the plot of the movie. That's all you really need to know before we get to spoilers. So, I'll ask the question. Tim, we've obviously seen these before, we've seen all of these before. Do you enjoy Friday the 13th Part 2?
So, like we said in the last review, I'm not a huge fan of the first one. It's okay. And I remember not being crazy about this one either, but rewatching it the other day, I was actually kind of like pleasantly surprised. I was like, you know what, this is actually pretty good. I still feel like it's not quite there yet. Like it's still not what I want the series to become exactly, but I think it works. I think it has some pretty fun kills. The characters are all pretty likable, and it's definitely like a good slasher. I was surprised. I thought I was gonna be a little more down on it than I was.
Yeah, I like it a lot actually. I feel like there's definitely elements of it that aren't quite Friday the 13th yet in terms, obviously the hockey mask and all things. But having said that, I actually really enjoy Baghead Jason, and I think what I would give this movie compared to the rest of the franchise is this one might actually have the best kind of horror of the franchise. And what I mean by that is the final, the final girl chase, if you will, that whole sort of last like 15-20 minutes of the movie, I actually think has a lot of creepy little moments with, I
love the like kind of setting of it, like some of the, let's just say some of the stuff that they run into, I think is really, really done. And yeah, it has a very creepy aesthetic.
Yeah, just sometimes you'll see like Jason with his baghead, like just through a window somewhere in the background, or he'll be running around with his pitchfork, and I thought the chase scene was really
very
well done.
farmy.
Yeah, compared to like the chase scene at the end of the last movie, where I thought it was quite weak overall, with Mrs. Palmer chasing after Alice, but this one here, when he's chasing. Well, I won't spoil it, I guess, because we're not spoilers yet. But when he's chasing the final girl, I feel like it's actually kind of creepy. It's well done. Like when she's hiding around the car and she's hiding in the cabins or whatever. Like all of it's kind of creepy, and like him running around with that bag on his head is actually quite good. Like as much as I think there's better movies in the franchise later that are more fun, I actually think in terms of a horror movie, this one actually, at least the last like 25 minutes, I think is probably the best that the series ever actually got at horror, which is kind of weird, but. I
think you're kind of hitting it on the hitting on the head there, like
on the back head.
Like when I think of like when I think of the series in my head, I have kind of a like a vision, a feeling of it, and yeah, it is the tropiness and the hockey mask and the kind of big slow like lumbering oof, that is Jason.
Jason's running around in this one.
Yeah, he feels more like an actual person, which maybe that's not what I want when I think of the series as a whole, but I think it works in this, and and it does actually come off like probably maybe the best horror wise. It makes it actually feel like a little more tense and a little more like there's actually stuff at stake, as opposed to I feel like the other ones where it's more like kind of like popcorn.
You're almost rooting for Jason in the later movies, and you're just kind of having fun with the kills. I think the kills are kind of, I think there's some decent kills in this one. There's one in particular that's spectacular.
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Oh yeah, but I think a lot of them they're cut off a little bit too quick. I always thought, like, I feel like a lot of them, as soon as they happen, it fades to white. Like it's kind of this thing this movie does every time there's a kill, it fades to white before it goes to the next scene. And some of those I feel like come in a little bit too quick. Like it wouldn't give me like a second to really appreciate the fact that this person just died. They just cut really quickly.
I can see that.
But some of them are okay. I think the characters are better than this one. The first movie, I feel like more of them are memorable. I feel like the jokes, their characters kind of okay. I think
a little annoying, but not horrible.
Yeah, they don't shove him in your face though, so he's kind of fine. Alice, the main girl, she has a bit more attitude. She's kind of like giving the head counselor who's like training everyone. She's giving him a hard time. She's showing up late to the initial meeting that everyone's having on orientation day.
Please tell me you got Final Girls vibe from that introduction scene.
I actually kind of did. I mean, it wasn't as over the top as Final Girls when that character entered, but it was kind of that way. It's just she comes in the car late. Yeah.
I think it's because we just watched it. Like I couldn't help but every now and again seeing like, oh hey, yeah, it kind of reminds me of this movie.
Well, what's actually quite funny is I've not played it myself because I don't really like multiplayer video games, but the Friday the 13th game is like, it's out and about just now, and I've seen some other people play it. And what's funny is like the building in this one is really recognisable to me now because that's one of the main maps in the game. Like, because there's one like based on two, so that's pretty cool. But I think she's got a nice attitude to her. She has more of a character than Alice did, I think, in the first one. And I think the other characters are, like, you've got, what's the guy in the wheelchair? Mark, and then the girl who's into him. Like, they're kind of, relatively likeable. I mean, it's just kind of like basic courtship. Like, she's kind of into him and they're befriending each other. And then you've got the other couple that are around, the guy with the hat and his big frizzy-haired girlfriend. And, like, she's really curious and wants to go check out this camp where something went down. Like, they're not great characters. It's not super deep stuff, but I feel like I remember them a lot better than this one than I did the first movie. I mean, sure, you remember Kevin Bacon because he's Kevin Bacon, but like, if he wasn't Kevin Bacon, you wouldn't remember that character.
Yeah, and I did actually like the opening scene, which we see what happens to the girl at the end of the first movie, and I actually thought it was pretty nice to see her back, and I actually thought that scene was really effective as in terms of horror and some kind of nice, quiet tenseness and creepiness.
Yeah, it has more style. Like there's a moment. It's actually a very Halloween-esque moment. I'm thinking from just the first couple of Halloween movies, but you see like a kid playing outside at night in the street, and his mum shouts him back in, and then you just see these grown-up feet kind of walk into the frame, and it falls. It was a very kind of, and I think right away it's doing something different from the first movie because the first movie you never even saw the killer's feet. I don't think, not until like later, whereas in this one they actually hide what Jason's looks like for most of the movie. In fact, his entrance later on is one of my favourite moments in the film when you first see him in his baghead glory. It's actually a really well done moment, but just right away it's like there's more of a sense of style compared to the first one, so I think just in terms of direction it's just a better movie compared to the first one. I mostly like the opening scene. It is a bit of a shame to just like kill off the survivor from the last movie.
Yeah, that was sad, but
admittedly, we mentioned this in the first review, but there was some real world reasons for that. Like, the actress wanted to like just do one scene and go.
Oh, right. I forgot that was this movie.
Yeah, because she was getting stalked in real life by some creepy fan of the first one. So.
Shit.
So you can't blame it for it. You can't blame her for that. But like, it just it's to take that out of the equation. Like, it always annoys me in other slasher sequels when they do this. It's just this one happens to have a good reason for it. So, but hey, but no, it's most well done. My only real complaint about this opening scene is the ridiculous amount of flashbacking in the dream to the end of the first movie.
Oh sure.
You see about a solid 5 minutes of the first movie's ending. At the start of this movie, and admittedly, I get at the time of release it had been a year for audiences who'd seen the first one in the theaters, and they may be like, okay, it's good to have a recap. But when you're either familiar with the series a lot already, or in this case, we only watched the first one last month, it's like, no, come on, guys, chop it up, make it quick.
That's true. Yeah, I guess this was probably at a point where I don't know if like video stores were around that much then. It might have been hard to like rent this on home video or something, that maybe they felt the need to show people.
They were. I mean, 81, I think, VHS and beta were definitely things. I don't know, like how huge they were yet. I think they were pretty huge though, I feel, because they started in the late 70s, I think. Okay. So if I recall, I think this was around the real boom of it, especially maybe not so much for buying, because tapes used to cost a fortune, but for renting, stuff was quite big at the time. I seem to recall E.T. being like one of the biggest rented things of all time when it came out in VHS. So that was a year after this. So
that makes sense.
So it's in the time range, but okay. But obviously, you're not far removed from a time when people just couldn't rent things, and see them at home whenever they wanted. They'd either see them in TV randomly at some point or whatever. But yeah, so you got better direction, and the opening scene's pretty good. If I was to criticise the movie, I would maybe say there's not a whole lot of progression for the characters. Once they arrive at the camp to when like the final big act starts going down, there's not really that much that progresses between the 2 points. We just kind of get to know a lot of the characters and then they start dying, which I know that sounds just like a slasher movie, but I guess what I'm saying is it feels like there's no build to it really, and it just starts happening. It's not a big deal, but it was just kind of something I was noticing this time more than usual, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess it would have been nice to maybe have a little more. It didn't bother me too much. I guess probably because with this type of movie, you're maybe not expecting
Oh yeah, sure.
that much.
I think I just mean in terms of the build because it gets to this point where the head guy is like, "Hey, everyone, do you want a last night in the town?" And a lot of the people leave and go to like a casino bar thing in town, and it's like, okay, now everything starts going down, but it kind of feels like it's just a switch flipped, and it's like, okay, it's time to start killing a lot of people now, as opposed to
okay, yeah.
as opposed to escalating like gradually throughout the movie. It kind of not that there's no kills in that section. There's one or two, but. It's just I don't know. It's a small complaint because I actually really like this one a lot. I actually think this is a like top. Well, I'm not going to spoil because we're going to rank them when we finish. So I think we'll keep that to ourselves. But I feel like this is fairly high up there in terms of the movies. I guess I'll give the spoiler warning and we can talk a bit more freely about what's going on in the movie. So full spoilers for Friday the 13th Part 2. So. Yeah, I actually think it's funny. I just mentioned that a lot of the camp or a lot of the councillors go into town to get drunk and whatnot. It's actually kind of funny that most of the people at the camp actually survive, including the jokester, the comedy character who like pranks them at the start with towing their truck, and then later on he's the one who jumps out at the fire, around the campfire when he's telling the story about Jason.
Oh right.
He actually just is away during all the killing and is fine. Like he survives. Everyone else survives. It's only the characters who stayed behind and then. Yeah, just the ones that stay behind, and then like old crazy Ralph, who comes back to get killed, gets strangled around a tree.
Yeah, I was actually pretty happy to see him. That was the same actor from the first movie, right?
Yeah, same guy.
Yeah, that was a happy little surprise to see him on screen, and then I was a little bummed that he died.
Yeah, I think they kind of had to kill him though. It was going to get really repetitive if he kept showing up every year, but like,
sure, yeah,
or every 5 years, I should say, given what we've been told. Like, it's got a death curse. You're all doomed. They were doomed too. So no, this is fun stuff. Yeah. One of my favorite moments in this movie is what's her name? Ginny, which is Amy Steele's character, the final girl. And the head guy, they've came back early from being out, and they come back to camp, and some of the killings have started, and she sort of goes up to the room in the main house, and comes into this bedroom where the couple have been speared, two for one. You got a 2-for-1 kill with them, and he's actually lying in the bed. He gets up, and this is how they reveal what he looks like. He sits up, just pulls the sheet down, and he comes towards the camera, and he's got his sack head on, and like I just think it's a really effective moment. It feels super imposing the way he's coming towards her. It's actually genuinely really creepy.
Yeah,
that was well done. I think the whole like the last 20 minutes is really well directed for the most part. All of the hiding, the hand coming in the car when she's trying to get away in the car, and hiding around the car and seeing him in the background, kind of looking around for her. But not quite finding her. Everything with the pitchfork and all that shenanigans.
Yeah, and it's really interesting just seeing Jason act this way, because it is so different from what he becomes known for like later in the movies. But he feels much more like an actual person. Like he's kind of faster and doesn't seem to just kind of appear out of nowhere. Like you get you get more of a physical sense from him, I feel like, than you do in other movies.
Yeah, you feel more of the actual rules of physics and nature apply here than maybe some of the later movies do, and that's okay. But and obviously this has the famous scene where she finds like his mother's head in the cabin, and she puts on her sweater and like try and tricks him. It's like, "Mother's talking to you, Jason. Mother's talking to you."
Yeah, I thought all that stuff was really effective, and like just I think it's kind of takes it to another level where you have what you think of as the slasher movies, like being out in the woods and chasing these teens down stuff, but then being in this like kind of cave area with this like head and like almost like a little like altar set up for it. It gives it almost like a like kind of a creepy gothic vibe to it or
Hmm.
something, which I really dig. It's like, oh, this is neat and interesting, and kind of something we don't often see in these types of movies. And yeah, it's like there's a real cool like tone about it.
Yeah, and when Jason gets stabbed with the machete, he gets stabbed right in the shoulder, and it actually goes down
Yeah.
quite deep. It's like sticking out like here, and it's like, oh man, that's like a proper deep, deep, deep cut. They've cut right through your shoulder blade, which is pretty cool. They do the big fake out at the end, of course, where he comes jumping through the window. It maybe doesn't quite match the scare on the boat from the first one,
Yeah.
but it still it fits in tone because they do the fake out with the puppy. The dog comes at the door.
Yeah.
Muffin,
It-
I believe, is
yeah.
the dog.
Yeah, I feel like that is way too sweet for this movie. Like the
Mhm.
music was so like sugary sweet with that. That was hilarious. But so now I do like the Baghead look, but how do you feel about his actual face?
Yeah, a bit over the top.
Yeah,
With his face.
it's a
I agree.
little much. Like I mean I think it's one thing if you want to give him like a weird ghoulish, like corpsey kind of looking face or whatever, that's fine. But this is it's like so big and massive and yeah, it's a little much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, here's a weird complaint, which doesn't bother me that much, but he did it twice in this movie, and it really bugged me. He used the back of the machete instead of the front to kill people, and I thought it just looked weird.
Okay.
Especially the second one, because the first one he slits the guy's throat who's hanging upside down. The pervert who was like stealing the girl's clothes.
Oh, they got caught in the trap.
He got caught in the trap. And he slashes his throat with the back of the machete. And I'm like, okay, whatever, it doesn't really matter what side you use for that, I guess. I'm assuming, I've never handled a machete myself, but I assume the back is pretty sharp as well.
Yeah.
But then later on, the best kill in the movie, he stabs the guy in the wheelchair with the back of the machete into the face. And it's really cool how it just kind of sits in his face. But I'm like, why the back? Why not the front? It's designed to be the cutting part. It felt weird to me. I'm like, why does it...
Yeah.
They try to like subliminally say Jason's kind of backwards, so he uses the machete backwards.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But of course, dead guy in wheelchair does roll down the stairs, and it is fantastic.
So that is your favorite kill, right? You're saying
Obviously,
before.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It is amazing. the Yeah, it's so visceral, and then it lasts so long. Like, and you see him like falling, backwards, like on the wheelchair down the stairs, and it doesn't. It just feels like it lingers so long on the shot, and then, yeah, just the sense of like helplessness and stuff in it is
Yeah,
really well done.
Jason don't discriminate. He'll kill you regardless of who you are. And I think they did a decent little job of kind of just making us like him a little bit, because he...
Oh yeah.
Obviously, he's little Willy Wonka with the girl and her like sort of liking him. That was all nice and stuff. I think they actually nailed, and I say this as someone who grew up in a house with someone in a wheelchair, that his attitude where he doesn't want help because he wants to prove he can do it himself. That's a very real sort of little touch to him. I feel like a lot of people in wheelchairs like to feel that way, they like to prove that they can do things themselves. They don't want to feel like they're always needing help for things. So they kind of nailed that, which I thought was well done.
I thought they did a good job. Like, they weren't over the top with it, because sometimes like
Yeah.
they try to go for like a big dramatic effect where he's like, no, I can do it myself. But no, he was like a very casual guy. Like, he'd be talking to the girl and she'd ask a dumb question and he'd be like, well, I mean, obviously, blah blah blah. And it's like, oh, this actually feels like very real, the way they're talking and stuff.
Yeah, and even the point, because he's like, his legs are paralyzed, and she's like, so is it just the legs? Is everything else okay? And it's like, he knows what she's asking at that point, and he's like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. Yeah, I'm going to. So, like, yeah, it was well done. I mean, it wasn't super deep, but in a nice, simple level, which sometimes slasher movies do not achieve. It works. So, I think that's cool. Yeah, I like the sheriff who gets the hammer in the head. The back of the hammer. The claw part and his forehead. I think that's a good little kill.
Again, going for the back.
No, that one I get though, because that's a pointier side. I get that one.
Yeah.
But
I really like the opening kill to it. Again, the girl from the first movie.
Yeah.
Just it's not really like too big or anything, but just him like driving the knife into her head, it's like so slow
I'm
that it.
maybe I'm wrong here, but I thought that was a screwdriver. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
Oh, yeah, you might be right.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty thin, but yeah, like the way he just drives it though into her head, that I like. It's there's something I feel like it's kind of creepy about it. The way it's just so like almost casual. Like it's not like big over the top. There wasn't a bunch of like dramatic music and like going blah 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 and like cutting around and stuff. Is just I don't know, done very simply, which I thought made it more effective.
Yeah, it actually begs an interesting question though. He actually seeks her out where she lives and kills her out of revenge, which is not a Jason thing. Typically, I don't think of Jason like hunting people specifically down. And that's Michael Myers. That's the shape.
Yeah.
He hunts specific people down. Well, at least in the sequels. I mean, maybe not so much in the original, but
yeah. Again, it's a weird thing where we're coming at it with this knowledge of all these later movies that's kind of like shaping the way we're looking at it.
It kind of shows that they hadn't quite nailed down like obviously after this they decided more specifically what they wanted to do with Jason, but you kind of get the sense where it wasn't quite fully formed yet. But it works well in the context of its own movie. You get that he's pissed that she killed his mother, and that's it.
Yeah.
So no, that's a well done scene. Yeah, I like the idea that like people are like, yeah, you shouldn't be opening a camp up here. I know you're not quite in the same camp, but like seriously, this is like too close for comfort. Which makes me wonder. I can't remember. I'm really curious when we get to 3. Like, are we back at Crystal Lake? Are we at this second camp again? I'm curious.
There's a third camp.
There's a third camp. There's another.
It's a camp district.
Actually, we should mention actually at the end when we have the big jump scare of him jumping through the window and grabbing Alice. We then cut to like the morning after, and she's actually been taken into an ambulance, and she's asking about the guy. She's asking, "Oh, Steve how's Steve is or not Steve Paul." His name's Paul. I don't know why I said Steve. Who's Steve? There was a Steve in the first movie, I think. Anyway, so she's like, "Oh, is Paul? Is Paul okay?" Blah blah. And you don't really find out. You get the sense that he's probably dead, and she's been left alive for whatever reason. Maybe because she did pretend to be his mother, and he still kind of has a weird thing where he thinks it's kind of her or something. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah.
It's funny though, because this is the only movie that does that thing where she pretends to be the mother, and it's become such a big thing. Like, in the video game, that's like a big mechanic. If you find the clothes and a female character puts them on, you can stun Jason by like distracting him and pretending to be his mother. So it's just kind of funny how it's only in this one movie, but it's become such a thing that people think of.
Yeah, I would say they also do it in Freddy versus Jason, kind of, but I guess those would be the only two. Because Freddy takes on the form of his mother, and
oh, true, yeah, that's a little bit different because it's all in his head and it's
true, yeah,
it's magical powers, but yeah, okay, yeah, sure, so that's fair.
But I like that. Yeah, maybe not this exact scenario, but I do feel like it does kind of be. Maybe I'm just thinking of like one other movie, but I do like that there's a thing where people like try to trick Jason. Like he's not a person that you defeat with blunt force. Like you got to think of, admittedly he's not the smartest guy, so it's not like over the top tricks, but there's stuff that you kind of have to do to throw him off his game.
Yeah.
At least I can think of at least one other one of the other movies that does it. I forget if it's more than that, but
we'll find out. We'll find out when we get there. No, I like 2 a lot. I think characters are a bit more memorable. The horrors maybe some of the best that the entire series does. We should mention this is directed by Steve Miner, who also directs the third one. He directed Halloween H2O, which we talked about a few weeks ago. Okay. He also, I think he directed Lake Placid, which we might do one day.
Okay. All right.
Big crocodile movie. Can't beat it. Nothing wrong with a big giant croc. But no, so anything else you want to talk about in the movie? Anything I've glossed over or missed? Maybe a kill that you'll enjoy that I've not brought up.
I feel like we covered covered most of it. I mean, again, I really enjoyed it, but it's again, it's not super deep. That there's a lot of different facets to talk about.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's going to be true going forward. So I'm actually kind of amazed we went almost an hour in the first movie because I feel like there's even less than that one to talk about. But I guess because it's the first one, you're talking about setting up the franchise and what's here, what's not. well, that's obviously adds the fact that Jason's the killer, but we don't have the mask yet. His actions are a little bit different from later movies. What's funny though is I feel like 3 is more of a comedy movie compared to this one, and it's the same director, which is really weird. But we'll get to that next month and we can talk about that. So I guess that leaves us to rate this one out of 10. So Tim, how would you rate Friday the 13th Part 2?
You know what? I'm actually, it was a little higher than I was expecting originally, but again, when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is a lot better than I remembered. Maybe it's just been a while since I watched them, but I think I'm gonna give it a 7.5, which I think is pretty decent. It's still not the it doesn't reach the heights of the franchise that I really enjoyed later on, but I think pretty decent. And even if you're not a big fan of the Jason and stuff as a whole, I think it kind of stands out on its own. Where if you like slashers in general, I think it's a pretty good watch too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how I rate the rest of the series. I don't think any of them are like amazing films per se. I just like them a lot.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to land even slightly lower than you. I'm going to say a 7, but I like it a lot. I think it's a great Friday the 13th movie. But it's the sort of thing where I think if you're someone who doesn't like slasher movies, this is not going to change your opinion on them. You're going to.
Oh sure, yeah.
You're going to watch this and go think it's just as shit as any other slasher movie you don't like. But I enjoy it a lot. So no, solid 7 for me out of 10. So. That's been Friday Part 2. So obviously we'll get to number 3 next month. We have another franchise film next week as well, another 2, which makes sense because it's the month after October and we did a lot of originals last month, so we're doing a lot of 2s this month. But yeah, so we'll have one of those next week. So let us know what you think of Friday the 13th Part 2 in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Head over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Obviously you can support us over there and support the show, the channel, all that stuff. But I'm specifically mentioning it as well here because me and Tim just did an audio commentary track for The Room, which is not a horror film, but I feel like Tommy Wiseau would make a great horror movie. So you can check it out. It's in the commentary tier, of course. The first commentaries from last month are free for everyone. This month going forward, of course, they're in the appropriate tier, but you can check out those and do that. But yeah, so that's fun stuff. I feel like I had one more thing I really wanted to mention. Oh, the Crypt. I want to again promote the Crypt. Also a Patreon thing you can get in the $5 tier. You get to suggest movies to go into a sort of, we call it the Crypt, but it's basically a to-do list, and it's a list of movies that are user submitted that we will, from time to time, get one, pick one out and do it. We'll probably try and at least do one a month if we don't, or it might go into a vote in Patreon or something like that. But it's kind of the idea that there's an ongoing list there that people have submitted to, and we can we don't have one planned for this week, so let's pluck one from there. Let's pluck a movie from that list. So check it out, and there is an audio feed for Screams After Midnight which you can find on the iTunes and whatnot should you desire it. But there you go. So that's all my plugging done. So Tim, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for watching and listening, guys. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we'll see you next time.